Well, Sunday we're moving through into chapter 4 in Romans. And if you were with us, I hope it's all starting to come together as a little bit of a picture. Paul's painting a picture after the pit, how God justifies us, declares us righteous. And he goes to great lengths, Paul does, really, to great lengths to explain the details of how that happens. And part of the thing that he does so well is to make sure that you cannot walk away from these chapters thinking, even for a moment, that it has to do with anything that is associated with your works. It's all God's grace, it's all God's mercy. That none of us can really offer anything to God that somehow qualifies us. And so that's really such a big theme on the front end of Romans once he gets past the pit and he describes the way out of the pit, so to say, if we want to use colorful language, which is faith in and on Jesus Christ who saves you. So if I'd have had just a few more minutes, this particular topic, that you're saved by God, you're saved by Jesus Christ, by his grace, right? As a gift, right? Without payment. That's what that word means, as a gift. So grace, unmerited favor, without payment, through faith, which means you trust him, you rest in him, and he's unyielding on that. That particular topic is a challenge in Christian circles. Like, no, you have to do something. You have to be a certain way. You have to do certain things. Back in Paul's day, it was circumcision. Today, it would be, oh, no, but you have to do baptism. You have to do good works. You have to do. And part of that tension comes from a particular passage in James. And I decided not to go there on Sunday, but a few more minutes and it'd be worth reading. But the challenge with James is you can't just, like you can't rip Paul out of context. You can't rip James out of context either. So listen to James' context because he'll say something that sounds very different from Paul. Paul says, no works. You're saved by grace through faith alone. It's all Jesus Christ. No works, no works, no works. James says, see, it's not just faith alone, but works. But if you miss his context, you're confused. His context is critical, and I'll show you that here in just 1 second. It's not hard to catch his context. You just have to be willing not to rip something out of context. So James chapter 2 is the great passage, and he says, what good is it, my brothers and sisters? What good is it if someone says he has faith and does not have works? In other words, I have faith but no works, right? Now the killer here is James is not talking about your standing before God. James is talking about the evidence of your faith. So now he says, what good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? Is that saving faith? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, be warm, be filled, without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? So, also, faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. So his point is that if you have faith, if the faith is real, if there's a fire there, it will have smoke. If there's faith, you will have works in your life. He's not talking about your standing before God. He's talking about the evidence of a saving faith. And then he makes the comment later in that chapter, verse 22, you see that faith was active along with Abraham's works, and faith was completed by his works. And then scripture was fulfilled that says Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. He points to his offering of Isaac, which is chapter 22, and then he looks back at chapter 15, which was where Paul was, and says, you see, that was fulfilled. In other words, see, Abraham worked. That's true because his faith was real. And then he makes this statement, which we argue about, churches do. He was called a friend of God. You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. Okay, that does seem to contradict what Paul said, except not in the context in which James gives it. James says, listen, if your faith is real, he's not talking about the righteousness of God imputed to you. That's what Paul's talking about. He's not talking about your standing before God. That's what Paul's talking about. James is talking about, listen, if your faith is real, it will have works with it. And if it doesn't, you're a liar. Your faith isn't real. You say, I have a fire, but I've been watching you for years and I see no smoke. No smoke. You see, if you have faith, works will be there. That's what James is saying. So, standing before God, faith alone. Your life lived in front of your brothers and sisters and others that you're supposed to love, your works will show. And then, if you want to, you can say, see, your works and your faith work together that way before God. That makes good sense. But nobody boasts before God. And that really is Paul's point, not James's point. I hope that helps. This is a high tension passage in the church, and I hope that helps explain it.